Hey y'all, it's Brandi and I'm back with another episode of Brand New Bold. Today I'm super excited to have my friend Jhaelynn Elam here with me today, and we're just going to talk about so many different things. But Jhae, I'm just so excited to have you, so we're going to jump right into it. So who is Jhae and what do you do?
My name is Jhaelynn Elam, and I was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio. I then later went on to attend Tuskegee University, where I studied food science and biology, and then later went on to attend The Ohio State University, also studying food science. So I would say Jhae is somebody who loves adventure. I love food. I love to travel. I am somebody who also loves the idea of purpose and understanding your life's purpose and living in that and living in passion as well. I crave new experiences. I love new opportunities to do something different. And then I also love building communities and also existing in communities as well.
I'm just so excited to hear that, you like to do different things. And when I just heard about what you do in terms of your career, I just thought, wow, that's just so unique. So what was your relationship with food like growing up?
That's funny because I get that question often, and I think it's because not many people know that food science is a thing. There's a science of food, but when you think more about what makes food safe and healthy and things like that, that's kind of where I would say I found my interest. So growing up, my mom cooked a lot. I grew up in a single parent household, and I was kind of like her, right hand, so when it came to cooking. So things like prepping for dinner and then eventually preparing dinner, that was my life growing up. And eventually I just naturally had this insatiable interest and curiosity for food. And I later in high school, had the opportunity to do these science fair projects. And each time I did one, mine was always somewhat food related. So I would say my relationship with food growing up was super foundational in terms of who I am today. And I would say it was very intentional also.
I just find it so interesting that you went the food science route. So, what inspires you to become a food scientist at that?
I grew up in STEM. So STEM was the field that was kind of introduced to me growing up. It was a field where obviously, there's always a need for more Black students to go into STEM, but also specifically more Black women. And so I was just always around opportunities STEM related. And, with me kind of trying to at the time combine my passion, my curiosity, my interest for food with science. I learned about food science and I learned about, the science behind, again, making sure our foods are safe and healthy and nutritious. And, there's a reason that we can go to the grocery store, pick something up, travel home, put it in our fridge and then cook it and then be perfectly fine. So just that interest and kind of taking it to the next level and then just digging deeper, that's where I found my stride, I would say, in terms of the food industry. I still very much so have interest in R&D and in relation to recipe development, and a lot of what you do there is very much so similar to what chefs do every day. So still have an interest in that kind of work in terms of food, but specifically food science is kind of where I found that was a better fit for me.
Okay. So kind of go into what does that entail? What does that look like for a regular day for you? What are you doing? What are you smelling? What are you tasting? I don't really know what it's like at all. So
Smelling and tasting actually, because so for me, so within food science, there's this umbrella of the science. And so, under the umbrella, there are specific kind of focuses that make up what the food science world is. And so, you may have an interest in quality assurance or microbiology. And that means that you're more interested in understanding shelf life or understanding how to ensure the customer's experience is a quality one, or maybe you're interested in doing product development and you want to be in the lab and you want to actually be coming up with the formulas. There's so many spaces that you can kind of go into. But I decided to choose sensory as my space. And so sensory science in general is just the study of your senses, and specifically within food science, it's how we use our senses in relation to food experiences, and how we can actually, within my science, leverage data from the consumer's experience with food in terms of their sensory experience to make products better. And so I would say like my day to day is working. I work on a lot of cross functional teams. I work on a lot of initiatives that are renovation related, they're innovation related as well. Sometimes they're cost savings, sometimes they're, making renovations in order to make the product healthier or to fit like FDA guidelines. And all of these changes impact the actual sensory experience. And so that's where my function comes in. And so if you think about what does it look like to to reduce the amount of sugar in a product to make it like somewhat healthier, right? Or potentially like a sugar-free item. All of those like formulation changes impact the sensory experience again for the consumer. And so you have people who fall in love with a product, and then you make these changes, and potentially, their relationship with that product may change. And so we collect data to understand what the impact may be, and we leverage it again to make sure that we're not altering your experience too much. We want it to still be enjoyable for you. We obviously want to retain customers as well, and we don't want to lose anybody or alienate any groups of people. So a lot of what I do is like working side by side with individuals from product development, individuals from quality assurance, marketing as well, and then sometimes like market research too. So, there's like a group of us that work really well together, and where I fit in there is like being the voice for the consumer.
Okay. I love that. And you mentioned a couple things that that sparked my next question actually. And one of those being, really making sure that the consumer still has an enjoyable experience. And so you too are also a consumer of food and, of products and things like that. And you've expressed to me in the past, that you love to come up with unique ways to use, everyday ingredients. And so because of that, is it more important to you to know the source of where all your food comes from, or how are you using what you do for your career, just if you're just eating at home, or, when you think of what ingredients you want to purchase for your own personal use?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's see. So I would say that my awareness and my understanding of like ingredient functionalities within like, the food systems, like that advantage kind of allows me to approach it a little bit differently in terms of like when I am buying things and like how I am using things, or even like when I learn about like new ingredients at work potentially, or like, like there are certain things I pick up on, like I oftentimes do apply that at home. So I would say like my day to day, my job, and what I learned within the science of it does impact my experience with food a little bit. As far as like, do I pay like close attention to like sources and like where they're coming from? A little bit, but I would say that's just like me, just being me more so, and like just being curious about like, origin and things like that. And, there are products that I purchase in the grocery stores that like I don't deal with at work, or I haven't dealt with in any job I've ever had. So they're new to me in some ways. And so, as you mentioned, like I'm still a consumer, and I'm a consumer, but I'm also like a scientist and food scientist. So like me wearing my consumer hat looks a little bit different than maybe the average consumer. So I am like looking things up, or, I kind of take it a step further sometimes, and like how I want to like try to use it and like kind of think creatively. And the innovation of what I do in my day to day, I definitely carry that over into, how I decide to like prepare meals sometimes, or, try new things.
Yeah. And I actually want to shift gears here and talk about something you recently launched. Talk to the listeners about the Instagram series you launched called Innovative Ingredients, and, how you came up with it and what kinds of topics it covered, what type of guests you had. Just kind of plug yourself for a little bit.
Yeah. So let's see. So I would say that over like the past couple of years, maybe like 2 or 3 years, I've been introduced to more like Black food-owned businesses, or Black-owned food businesses, excuse me. And I've also like met like owners of Black food businesses as well. And so that has inspired and motivated me to use their products, like purchase their products, find other products, that are also Black owned as well. And, I kind of always like share those things with people. Like I get excited when I find like new Black food products, and like I share it with my friends. And so, one day, and sometimes I would share it on my social media too, because I just think that, it's really important to know that there are options out there for food items, food ingredients that are Black owned. And so I think I was like on Instagram one day and I did like a quick poll and I asked people like if they like to cook, things like that. And then I asked like, well, do you, like try new things, and like, well, do you own any Black food items, or like are you aware of any? And the like responses were kind of unexpected. Like there weren't a lot of people who knew about Black owned food businesses, who purchased Black owned food products, and who use them, and who currently have them in their pantries. And like I had like at the time I think like 5 different ones. So like no, with me having this awareness of like, well, the products are out there, I just decided to kind of like bridge the gap a little bit. And so, around that time, I think Women's History Month was approaching, and so I decided to use that as an opportunity to kind of like, use my platform essentially to share some of these dope women who are doing dope things in the industry. And some of them I knew or I had been following, like some type of relationship was kind of there, and some were actually new to me. And I just reached out to them and I kind of pitched this idea of like, would you be open to going on IG Live with me and talking about your products? And for those who are new to me, like I purchased them, and like just wanted to use it as an opportunity for us all to kind of learn, a safe space to ask questions. Like the audience would include people who like to cook, but have never used products, or maybe they like to cook and they have used some Black food on some Black owned food products, but they were interested in more. And then you had some people who were interested in starting their own, and they just didn't know like where to start. And so I thought it was really important to do this, considering that I'm in the industry, I'm a Black woman, and so I just have like a great appreciation for the work that they're doing.
Yeah, and I really always enjoy when I get on social media and it's more of like an awareness perspective. I totally love when it's like you're looking at one thing and it's like, oh, this person knows this person, and it's connecting you with different businesses and different companies and things like that. So that's one of my favorite parts of social media, actually. But speaking of that, if you're on Instagram as much as I am, you may have come across Jhae's travel agency, Sizije Travel Company. So can you just tell the listeners about your travel agency, like, and how it came to be, and what types of services your business provides?
Yeah, so we are a boutique style travel agency and company. And our goal really is to empower the modern day traveler. And so when I say that, what I mean is, how we travel today looks a lot different than maybe how our parents travel, when they were our age. And so we want to kind of keep up with the times and keep up with like, what's new, while also like building community essentially. So, and a lot of what I do kind of like in some ways like overlaps with like my personal life. And so I enjoy traveling personally. I travel, I make connections, and making those connections, I somehow like loop them back in with my business. And like that could look like I plan a good trip and they host us, they help us plan it. Or it could look like I have clients who want to go somewhere and I'm connecting them with clients, and I'm helping them plan, bring their vision to life for their trips. And really like in doing that, my goal is like building community, like building a global community essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy, the progress that we've had so far. A lot of what we do includes planning trips, which those are like our public experiences. So anybody really can join those. And then we also have like, the service where we do planning for private trips. And so that means that you can come with like your group or whoever you're traveling with. And if you don't want to do the work of planning and the research, then like that's when we come in and we can help you do that. So our goal is to be a resource ultimately, build community as well, offer unique experiences, unique cultural experiences, and immersive experiences. And that's kind of like what we've been doing since we started.
Okay. So I want to know, like, what is it like being a Black woman, not even in the travel industry, but a Black woman that owns her own travel agency? So like, kind of just talk to us about what that's like for you.
Yeah, so when I first started, there were not a lot of like group travel companies out there, and really like the company that was like trailblazing through that industry, specifically like Black travel, at the time was Travel Noir, and like now since then you do see like a lot more like Black travel groups and everything. So I would say like how I feel now as an owner of a travel company, being a Black woman, there's like a sense of community that I feel like I have met a lot of people during the process of me building my company who I've become friends with or who I've like, collaborated with, or, we have plans to collaborate in the future. So I would say overall, like the experience is very fulfilling. It's very intentional as well. And it's just important, to me that as a Black woman, I'm doing something that fills my cup, but also like the cup of my community as well. And so it just feels like really rewarding doing that work. Um, I would say that, you know, there's still a long way to go in terms of just seeing businesses like ours like grow. And like when I say grow, like obviously only if the company has an interest in growing to a certain degree and a certain size. But when you think about like the major travel companies, you think about TripAdvisor, Expedia, like these like mainstream kind of resources for travel, you know, we don't have any Black companies in that lane, and let alone Black women owned companies in that lane. So, I aspire to have that amount of growth for my organization and to kind of like pave a path essentially for other Black owned businesses to do the same if they have an interest in doing it. So just kind of like wanting us to succeed holistically as a community, like being Black women and starting businesses and thinking about what that looks like in like the lane I've kind of chosen and it being travel. Like I just have like really big goals and really big visions for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just love how you were saying, fill up your cup as well as the communities and being very intentional. And, recently you and your company were featured in Forbes on the Forbes Next 1000 2021 list. And that had to have felt so great to know that you made a Forbes list. Like, that's amazing. And I feel like you just had to know that what you're doing for the community and for Black people is making a difference. So kind of talk to me and the listeners about what it was like when you first found out you were on the list and how, if at all, that has like further influenced the goals that you have for your business.
Yeah, so definitely an amazing experience and accomplishment. I mean, I would say like if you talk to most entrepreneurs, like they have an interest in making Forbes list, feature, something, right? Like Forbes is kind of like always top of mind, I would say, for entrepreneurs because like, it's kind of at the forefront of like all of those communications and accolades and things like that. So yes, it's always been like on my like vision board. Like it's always been something I've wanted to achieve. It's like some type of recognition by Forbes. So to actually get that was mind blowing, quite honestly. Like it was very much so mind blowing, but also like I kind of knew it was for me. I can't explain like that feeling of alignment that I had just during this time, and then like hearing back from them and them asking for more information and me sending more information. Like I just felt good about it, and it was I don't know, it was like one of those things that just kind of confirmed that I was on the right path and like living my life the way that I should be living it, and like like I am right where I'm supposed to be essentially. It just was like confirmation of that. And like when you are building something from the ground up and like yeah, there are people who kind of done it similar to how you want to do it, but like there's never a true blueprint because like your vision is your own. And so because of that, you just work really hard at it. And so to be recognized is a feeling that I think every entrepreneur that's building something from the ground up wants to have, and like we want to have several of those, obviously. But for me, like that one was like a really, really big one. So just like mind blowing. I don't know, just absolutely mind blowing. They don't tell you made the list until like you make the list. So
Oh
like
my
there's
God.
of like, hey, you made the list and it's going out tomorrow. Like, no, like when the list goes out and everybody else sees it, like that's when I saw it too.
Wow.
a forewarning, you know, like you kind of may have an idea because, you know, like there are like editors or reporters reaching out, like asking questions and like fact checking and like, yeah, that feels good, but that doesn't mean that you got it. That just means that they're doing their job, you know?
Right.
So yeah, so I had no idea until that morning, but what I did know is when it was launching. And so like I checked like the website that morning. It was like maybe 6 something at the time, maybe 6. And I think they did it by state maybe. And so I went to Michigan, which is where I was at the time. And I saw my name and it was just like, yeah, I cried actually.
I would too. That's so amazing.
I just thank God because again, it just felt like confirmation. And there's nothing more motivating than like feeling like you are where you're supposed to be, right? Like everybody like that. And I spoke earlier about like passion and purpose, and like I really meant what I said because I truly believe that living a life of passion and purpose is like what is fulfilling, and you know, like that's something that I strive to do. And so that confirmation was just motivation, honestly.
Yeah. And I'm low-key getting emotional for you right now. I don't know why. But I mean, it just makes me so happy to see Black people doing things that make them happy and that are progressing them and the culture and things like that. And that actually brings me to my next topic of, you know, the idea of Black luxury. And, you know, Black people are being exposed to the more things, taking advantage of opportunities, like to live a luxurious lifestyle, you know, and something that other communities may have had more of a hold on traditionally. But I also just love this concept because, you know, everyone has their own interpretation of what that means for them. So what does Black luxury mean to you, and how are you, through both your career as a food scientist and a Black business owner and entrepreneur, just encouraging people to tap into this idea of Black luxury?
I love this question because I love how you mentioned that it means something different to everybody. And I think that that's like, especially for us, you know, I think we've kind of redefined it for us as well. I think that's it exclusive. Black luxury and just like luxury in general, it's this idea that you can really do what you want to do with like what you have. And like, you know, like,
Yeah.
and it's doing it in a way that like makes you feel good, makes you happy, and unapologetically so. I don't really tie it to money. Like I tie it to like how it makes me feel. I really, really do. And obviously, like there are certain things that cost, you know, more than others. And so, you know, like naturally people view that as a luxury just because of like the price tag of it. But like a luxury could be, you know, like me coming home and like dolling up my bathtub and like making it a vibe and like me soaking, you know, and like that feels like a, and in reality, like not everybody can do that. So like in some ways it is a luxury, right? But that's something that makes me feel good, and that's something that makes me feel better about myself. And like that's something that like, you know, I would say kind of like feels like there's like this inner glow you kind of feel when you do these things for yourself. We need to redefine it a little bit because, and I love how we're doing it now. But I don't want people feeling like they can't have luxury because of price tags. You know, like I feel like you really can. You define it for you know yourself, and kind of like again like what is it that makes you feel good? You know, like. And feel good could mean like what is it that makes you feel prettier that day, or like what is it that makes you feel like, you know, like a boss ass bitch. I don't know, like whatever it is that does that for you. Like I feel like that's your luxury, you know, like, or like what is it that makes you kind of like breathe, you know, breathe deeply in a moment, or like kind of have a moment to yourself, and like a moment to just kind of like exist, you know, with like no worries, like things like that. Like those are luxury. I love the idea of being a cultured person, you know, and I feel like in some ways, like when the more cultured you become, like, I don't know, like I feel like the more elevated of a person you become, right? Like,
More experiences.
yeah, more experiences in general. Like I feel like you truly kind of walk in this life of like luxury, you know, with not just like a focus on like the money part of it, but like really just like no, like holistically, like I'm elevating, like I am elevated, you know. And
Yeah.
so I love fancy food and stuff. Like I love to learn about new fancy cheeses or like wine. Like I don't know, like that's luxury also to me. So
Yeah.
I feel like that just like my career, I guess a little bit has like exposed me to a little bit more. And so that's why I'm kind of like more intentional these days about making sure I incorporate those things into my life. And like honestly, like if you're my friend, you're probably gonna have fancy food as well. Like I'm gonna be
Yeah.
like, oh, this new like cheese, like learn about it. And like
Right.
because I want it to be inclusive in that sense. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like one of the things that I can say in my career that has felt like I don't know, it really shows, like how much of a difference it is when you come from different backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of you studying the same thing. And so, for example, like I've had coworkers who probably have had certain things growing up that I didn't have until like I was in my 20s and could afford it. Like
Right. Mm-hmm.
coworkers who were exposed to different things just because culturally that, like maybe they were more aware at a younger age. And like I wasn't. And so like there are those gaps that sometimes make groups of people feel excluded from experiences, from conversations, like just even being able to talk about certain things, being able to
Right.
have an opinion on like what you think about certain things. And it can get real snobby sometimes, like
Yeah.
in I would say in certain spaces, and like food is no exception. If there are people who grew up eating certain things, again, that like I myself may not have seen until I was intentional about it, or
Right.
until like invited into like certain spaces. So, I love to share those things with people because I want them to be able to like comment on things if they're ever in a position to do that, if they have an interest in it. But I just think that, like food is community in a sense. And so like you should be able to feel like you're part of that and not exclude it. Like it shouldn't be something that like makes you feel like less than,
Right.
just because you try something, right? Like that's not what I want it to be like for people and for my friends. So I love to share the wealth of knowledge that I get in my spaces.
You just summed up the whole episode. Like we could just end right there. No, but yeah, definitely like talking about sharing the wealth. And you know, it's funny because one of my like favorite songs out right now is No More Parties by Coil Ray. I mean, aside from the fact that it's just catchy, one of the things that she says is like, I'm only going to do shit that's going to make me elevate, and be around those type of people that are going to bring me up higher. And so I feel like I just can resonate with that. And, it's like when you surround yourself with more experiences and with different types of people that, may not necessarily have the same background as you, maybe know more than you, maybe have been exposed to more than you. I feel like that is how you as a person are making yourself have a richer life. You know what I mean? Like, because you're exposed to more things, and it's not necessarily just like you were saying, just taking a trip or spending a lot of money on something or the price tag. But I truly think that one of the beautiful things about life is the people that we're around, and like what we can learn and take from them, or I guess rather learn from them in life in general. So that just really resonated with me. And I'm just so glad that we got a chance to just touch on that, especially from your perspective. But speaking of, sharing the wealth, I recently learned that you also have a foundation called the Sizije Foundation, and you also launched this program called the Passport Project. So, what are the goals of the foundation and the project?
Yeah, so ultimately it kind of mirrors what we do in our for-profit organization, in that like our goal is to empower the students and provide them opportunities of travel, socially, globally, and financially. And like one of the I think you mentioned the Passport Project. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the programs that we have developed is the Passport Project, and the goal of that project specifically, or the goal of that initiative, is for us to actually increase the amount of passports that Black students have ultimately. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we want to offer them the opportunity and kind of like this, like, you know, this thought of like more Black students being able to travel and then becoming like young Black professionals, right? So we just talked about like not just traveling, but like the experience and like elevating and like living a life that feels rich. And like I mentioned also, like not having certain groups of people excluded from this. And I think sometimes like, eventually like you may meet a Black person like later in life, they don't have a passport or they've never been anywhere abroad. They don't have an interest. And even if they do, they don't know where to start. And so we kind of wanted to take that and kind of like go backwards and see like where we can make impact. And so where we landed was like at colleges and universities, and like kind of like working with some of their study abroad programs, or even if a student isn't like signed up for an abroad program, like we still want to put a passport in their hand. We don't like, one of the worst things, and I'm so glad that I got ahead of this for myself. I didn't get a passport until my last year of college because like, we didn't travel growing up. My mom doesn't have a passport. And I think that is what it's like for a lot of like young Black students, like you really are a product of your environment. And so, things like travel are things that you kind of have to be introduced to, and or eventually just like have that interest in. And so, to like want to just go see. But I didn't grow up in that environment, and so I didn't get my passport to my last year. But I'm so glad I did, because I was ready whenever an opportunity came up. Like, it was never like, oh man, I don't have my passport. Like, oh man, let me see how long it will take for me to get my passport. Like, and so I want students to have that experience. So like, if it's not a study abroad experience, like while they're in undergrad, but maybe they've graduated and, they just started their job and their career, and they have an opportunity to travel with their company, and like, like they can actually like be a part of that experience without like the red tape of like having to go through the process of getting their passport. So like really the goal and the impact there is to just like be able to offer the opportunity. It's us doing our part within the travel space to make impact. And this is just one of the things that we have a vision to do. And how we're funding it actually, and we're kind of rethinking the model a little bit, but like at least for those passports, we, for every person that booked a trip for one of our group trips, we actually, or it was like a 1-to-1. So every person that booked a trip, you then funded a student the opportunity to actually get a passport. And so we just launched it in 2019, paused because of the pandemic. So we only got to do one group of students. So this was a group of students at Auburn University who were first gen students as well, on their way to South Africa. And so we were able to fund on their whole group passports. So
oh my gosh,
we want to do more of that. And, their trip actually got, canceled or postponed because of the pandemic. But we were excited about like being a part of that experience for them, and just like allowing them the opportunity to experience it. And, being a part of that was super important.
If you could leave the listeners with some advice or words of inspiration about food, travel, Black luxury, anything we've covered today, what would you say?
You fill your cup daily when your passion and like your purpose intersect. And sometimes it's not just passion and purpose. Sometimes it's passion and like opportunity. Like sometimes it's, okay, this is what your 9-to-5 job is, or like this is what your industry is, but like how can you like bring the two things together? Like in what ways can you do that? Because I genuinely feel like, like there, like you should love what you do in some way. Like even if you have to make it work for you, like even if like this is not your ideal job, but like how can you incorporate some type of passion in your day-to-day? Like does that look like volunteering? Does that look like I don't like to force entrepreneurship on people. Like I'm not that person, but does it look like a side hustle where like you can actually have a passion project that you're profiting off of? Like, what does that look like? I feel like that's something that's just like super fulfilling. And so I would encourage other people to also think about that as well.
Awesome. Well, I love it. Oh, this is such a great convo. I cannot wait to release this. But if you want to go ahead and just drop any social handles or websites or anything like that you want to share, that would be perfect.
Sure. So like my personal social, I'm on Instagram at LLCoolJae. So it's LLCoolJhae. And then business, we have an Instagram page as well, and it's Sizije Travel, Sizije Travel. And then you can also find us on Facebook using that same tag as well.
Perfect. Well, Jhae, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. And thank you all to the listeners for tuning in. Catch you guys next time.